All right. Thank you all for joining us today. I have Jexxa, the developer of Vouch protocol that we're interviewing today. So I'm very happy to have Jexxa here. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate.
So to explain to someone that's never heard of Vouch, what is Vouch and what does it do?
Yeah, so Vouch is a liquid staking, what we call a liquid staking derivative platform. So if you're familiar with the likes of Lido or Rocket Pool on Ethereum, basically what it allows you to do is get your lazy um, pulse and stake it into the protocol, and you get the yield that the blockchain produces. So that's essentially what Lido and Rocket Pool do on ETH. So we're not exactly the same, but we have that same concept where you put in your liquid pulse and you get given a liquid token back, hence the liquid staking derivative component. So you're not just locking away your pulse and you can't access the liquidity of it. You actually get given a reciprocal token, which is essentially the same value as Pulse, but it builds in the value of the yield that's earned as by the validators each day. So every day that liquid staking derivative token is going up in value relative to Pulse.
Okay. So technically you're still in control of your tokens. You've just swapped your pulse for a token that you can utilize, reclaim your pulse with, or effectively sell on market. So
Yeah, exactly. You can use it like any other ERC20 token. You can put it into liquidity pools and participate in farms and things like that. And that's what we see a lot of people doing with their what we call V-Pulse. So V-Pulse is the liquid staking token. So they deposit their pulse, they get the V-Pulse token out, and then they want to do something a little bit extra with that. So they're earning about 11% yield on that just by being in the protocol. But if they think they can get a little bit more edge by either getting fees from being in a liquidity pool or going into a liquidity pool and then taking those tokens across to a farm and capturing some pretty crazy yields. I've seen some yields of like 800% and so forth that people are able to get from those other farming protocols. So yeah, you can use it like any other ERC20. I guess
nice.
like while we're talking about the liquidity thing, what's really unique about the liquidity options with vPulse is when you're pairing Pulse and vPulse together, they're sort of the prices are intrinsically linked. I said vPulse incrementally goes up against Pulse. So what that means is in a liquidity pool situation, it's quite unique. You don't suffer impermanent loss because the tokens aren't moving away from each other dramatically in price. They're just trending up together. So it's effective. It's like having the benefits of being in a stable pool, liquidity pool, where the stable coins should be relatively even in price, but you're getting the added kicker of holding an asset which should appreciate in value rapidly over time, that being Pulse.
Well, that's a positive. It's better than your pulse just sitting there if you can earn 11% on it. And if you're still in control of your own keys and you're still in control of your tokens effectively, then that's a real
Mm.
positive. It's better than there's a lot of pulse sitting in wallets doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you might as well put that to use, and you're actually providing a useful service on the chain as well. So by contributing your pulse to what we call the pulse pool, validators are picking up that pulse and putting it to work, running the validators on the network. So they're processing the transactions that you and I do every day on the chain, and they're providing the security of the network. So not only are you participating in getting the yield from those services, you're actually providing a valuable service which the chain actually needs. So as of today, I think we're running about 3,800 odd validators on the network within the Vouch protocol, and that will continue to grow over time.
Wow, that's a lot of validators.
Hmm.
So this protocol, it sounds like it's been up and running for a while. When did you actually launch the Vouch protocol?
Yeah, I think it was October 26 was the day we launched. So that was last year. So we've not quite a year old, but we're getting pretty close. It's been running rock solid since then. And and we can delve into this a little bit more, but when we launched, that was phase one. That was just getting the liquid staking derivative protocol up and running. And we've got two more stages, which hopefully we can delve into today, where they're going to lead us to. But yeah, stage one was just getting the actual liquid staking protocol up and running. So making sure the validators, people can join as validators, making sure the staking works, and that's been, yeah, it's been awesome. It's been rock solid. I'm really happy with the way that's progressed over time.
Oh, that's great. It sounds like it's been well battle tested. That's 9 months or so to this point, and
Mm,
uh, so that what obviously there hasn't been an issue so far. What sort of
mm.
reassurances do people have about smart contract risk if they're going to deposit their PLS into this protocol?
Yeah, yeah, good questions, mate. Like anything in the DeFi world, we take on the smart contract risk, whether it's Hex or whatever. We're used to running these smart contracts, and look, things go wrong from time to time. You do your best to get audits. I guess the benefit of with Vouch from a smart contract perspective is it's been running on Ethereum for a while. So this was not a protocol that was developed in the last 12 months and has been launched. It has been battle tested on Ethereum for, I'm saying, 3+ years now. So it was running on there for a while, securing a reasonable sum of money over there. Obviously, due to the fork of Pulse Chain being a fork of Ethereum, we were lucky. We could use a lot of that code, had to tweak a few things to make it fit into Pulse Chain. And then we went out and had it audited independently as well. So just running those checks and balances to make sure that we've done everything we can from a smart contract point of view to make sure that they're solid. I guess the one thing that people do need to be aware of is we are running validators, which are a real world service. So there's people involved in actually running the validators. There's no getting away from that. If you're going to provide services in the real world, unfortunately, you still need human hands doing something. So that's just understand that does happen in the background. There's a group of people running actual machines. So the validator operators are stepping up and running those machines.
Well, I guess that'd be the same with Lido as well, and that's
Exactly.
been running
Yeah.
successfully.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
also
If you were
it's like,
running validators, you were doing real world work. But I guess the kicker for that, the good thing about that is you get real yield. So that's the benefit of running this system is you're not relying on people to come in and buy tokens or anything like that. You are actually getting paid by the blockchain for doing that real world work.
it's one of the few things in crypto that generates real yield. Then,
Yeah. And so it's much like being a Bitcoin miner or something like that. Uh, you are getting paid for providing those security services to the network.
with less electricity bills.
Less electricity bills. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, not quite as intensive as being a miner, which is a good thing.
Well, that's also a positive. A bit like Pulse Chain, it was a copy of Ethereum, and rather than develop your own code, if you had that battle tested code, you can be more reassured that there's less flaws or less faults in it. And it's great
Yeah.
that you've had it audited yourself as well. So that gives extra reassurance for people looking to stake their pulse.
Yeah. Let's face it, the whole industry has been built off the back of the giants before them. So Bitcoin launched and out of that spun a number of different other coins, but also Ethereum was sort of born from that using some of the same underlying technology, changed a few things. So everyone sort of takes the base case and then morphs it a little bit for their needs. And that's how you get progress in this space. So yeah.
So that was phase one. It sounds like you've sorted that out and it's been running
Mm.
well. What's phase two?
Yeah, so phase two, this is probably the more exciting phase for me, is it adds a bit of an X factor to the project, and we get to once again build off the back of some giants. So we've over the past 12 months, we've been sort of just seeing what's going on Pulse Chain and seeing what works and what doesn't, and noticing that some things we're pretty unique in the way we've done some things on Pulse Chain with liquidity webs and tax tokens and things like that. And you sit back and you go, okay, and me personally, I hated reflection tokens from way back in the day. I had a bit of an axe to grind with the reflections tokens because I seen them as just a Ponzi scheme essentially. That was my view of them. But what we've seen on Pulse Chain is people have taken that concept and turned it into a really novel way of actually building out a full ecosystem, which has been really interesting to watch. And I don't even know if that's done much on other chains. I don't spend much time digging around on those projects on Base or ETH or anything like that. But what I've seen happen on Pulse Chain was very interesting. So, yeah, so we've looked across the landscape of what's been going on Pulse Chain, and we're now launching the phase 2, which is the launch of the actual Vouch token. So in phase 1, we had the liquid staking derivative token, VPulse, and we don't necessarily require any other token for that component of the system to operate. We've proven that works. Phase 2 is, okay, well, how do we start to take this liquid staking platform and give ownership to the participants of it? And that's what phase 2 starts to introduce, is how do we actually do that? And that's when a secondary token makes sense. So you can have this secondary token called Vouch, which allows us to, the value that we're building in this protocol allows us to capture a lot of that value in the Vouch token. So that's first and foremost what it is. It's about making sure that the participants using the system get to capture that value. It's also about how can we generate more revenue and build the system. And I'll talk about this in a moment. So that's how can we grow it? How can we make some really good feedback loops where we can grow the amount of validators, we can increase people's yield, hence build more value, and then capture that value. And we'll step ahead to phase 3. Okay, great. We've got a token now where we've got these phase 1 and phase 2 building on top of each other and reinforcing the value add. Okay, how do we make decisions in the network now? And that's where phase 3 will come in. We'll move to a DAO system where the holders of the Vouch token will actually be able to participate in having a say on the protocol settings and where revenue streams are directed to. So that's sort of the progression. Yeah, happy to spend some time talking about phase 2 a little bit more and how we see some of the value adds working. It's probably going to get a little bit into the weeds, but if people are interested in that, happy to talk about that.
Yeah, tokenomics are always an interesting thing, and it sounds like you've put a lot of time and thought into the tokenomics of how things work.
Yeah.
So what have you derived from that, and what have you decided on the tokenomics from Vouch as a result?
Yeah. So straight off the bat, I'll say, look, everything's not set in stone at the moment. We've got a pretty good idea of how we want things to work. But I guess from an operational point of view, like how we see the value adds working, maybe we can talk about that, because I think that's probably the more interesting component. So in Vouch, we're going to have 2 revenue streams. So the first revenue stream is from the liquid staking derivative platform. So as I mentioned, it does real world work and it gets paid Pulse in the form of rewards for the validators. And that's like a ticking clock. Your validators are up and running all the time, and every 5 minutes they're getting given a distribution of rewards that is allocated to every single validator that is healthy and participates in securing the network. So that's like a baseline reward where you get that. And that's running currently about, I'm saying 9%-ish, 9 to 10%. So that just ticks away. Where you get a little bit of an extra win if you're a validator is when your validator is elected to produce a block, you get the fees that are included in that block. So when me and you press buttons on Rabby or Internet Money Wallet or whatever wallet we're using, we get to select how much gas we want to pay for that transaction. And we all know when blockchains get busy, people pay more for that transaction because they want to get their transaction into the queue and processed. So you pay a priority fee to do that. So that's another little income stream that comes in on the validator side. And sometimes it can be really lucrative. We've seen a validator get its entire yield for a year in one of these rewards. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that little kicker, that bonus priority fee reward, and we're going to inject that into what we call the distributor contracts, and it divides up where that money goes within the ecosystem. And that's eventually what people get to vote on, is where does that income go. So that's income number one. That comes from the actual staking platform. Income number two will be from the actual Vouch token. So we mentioned we looked across the Pulse ecosystem and we've seen things like PTGC and a few other coins have done something what I think is quite interesting with the concept of what they call tax tokens. I'm calling it a revenue token now because I think that's a nice way to put this, and I think it particularly with Vouch, it actually aligns more with what it's actually doing. So let's explain how that sort of works. So on a token, you can, if you want, you can set a buy fee and a sell fee and a transfer fee. And when participants enter the system, if they want to be a participant in Vouch, they pay a percentage fee for the buy. If they sell, they pay a percentage fee for the sell. So it sort of it rewards people that buy and stay, and penalises people a little bit that sell, but nothing too over the top. But what's really interesting is if we take the combination of those fees, that is a revenue stream that the token is producing. In Vouch, we're pretty lucky. We can do something useful with that revenue. So, I'll keep referring to PTGC because a lot of people are probably familiar with that. They take their revenue and they split it, some for liquidity, some for holders, things like that. So you can carve it up however you like. We can do that as well if we choose, and in some cases we do, but we can also get those revenue streams from the token and feed that back into the validator system. So we can fire up more validators, and those validators produce more yield and more priority fees that go back into the system. So it's this self-fulfilling loop where the revenue from the token helps fund the staking protocol, and the fees generated from the staking protocol can go into producing more validators, but also doing buy and burns on the Vouch token, getting carved up in the form of distributions for holders, for validators, for other participants in the system. So we've got a lot of switches and dials we can move to redirect these revenue streams to where we need them at a particular point in time. So if we want to see massive price growth on the Vouch token, let's crank up the buy and burns and things like that. Add more liquidity so we can direct more to the liquidity pool. So we've got a lot of things we can do to help all these feedback loops reinforce on each other and just grow the system as a whole. So that's the exciting thing for me, is to see where we can take the two components, bring them together and see how we can make these feedback loops do some pretty interesting things and ultimately capture more value for the holders of the Vouch token and the users of the liquid staking system. Sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful, wasn't it?
No, that was great. It's the tokenomics are very exciting. If you obviously you're not associated with Lido or with PTGC, but if you combine some of the two most bullish tokenomics in the market and put them together, you've got genuine revenue from the buys and sells of the token, plus you've got genuine revenue from the actual protocol and from the validators. You've basically got tokenomics on steroids there. You've got a great system. So I do like the word revenue token. That's much better than tax token. Tax is such a dirty word. No one wants to be associated with anything tax. But revenue token is actually, there you go. Jexxa coined that here first.
A tax token was, in my mind, was taking from someone to pay earlier holders. That's essentially what a tax token used to do. If you got in early, you were the beneficiary because everyone behind you came in and paid the tax, and that got distributed out to the people before you. We're a little bit different. We're taking that revenue stream and we're injecting it back into the system and doing some work with it, and then carving it up to reward everyone that's a holder. So it's not like get in first and you are you're at the front of the queue and everyone else is paying you. It's not that sort of setup. We're being able to architect it in such a way so that we think everyone comes together and everyone's rewarded. Likewise, but on the same token, if you choose to exit the system, pay a fee. That goes back into the system anyway. You've had your fun. You can leave. You pay that small clip on the way out, and that still goes back into the revenue generation of the system and grows it. What I really want to talk about is what happens longer term, because I think that's probably the more exciting element here as well. We all know the way cycles go. They boom and they bust, and you can be, if you're holding coins, you can be along for that pretty scary roller coaster ride. What we're putting in place with Vouch is we're bringing a concept called community validators. So a community validator will be owned by the Vouch protocol. And the way that will work is a portion of the fees that are all coming in will get redirected to what we call the community validator pool. And every time that pool gets a certain amount of Pulse tokens, we can fire up more validators. Now, these are going to be owned by the ecosystem. So over time, we're going to keep building up this pool of what we call community validators, and they'll just keep churning in rewards, priority fees from doing the validator work. It doesn't matter whether it's a bull market or a bear market. These validators, these community validators, are just going to sit there and do their thing. They'll just keep earning the rewards. And let's say, so Pulse Chain currently has circa 50,000 validators, getting about, let's call it 10 to 12% yield on average. Now, if people decide, you know what, bear market, I'm unstaking, I'm selling my Pulse and I'm just going to sit on the sidelines for the bear market, and we see that number of validators drop to, I don't know, we go back down to 30,000 validators, for argument's sake, that 10 to 12% you're currently getting now actually goes up. So when Pulse Chain first started, you were getting 20% plus other fees. So in the bear market, our validators, our community validators that are sitting there will be earning higher rewards. And once again, that'll get pushed into creating more validators, boosting and supporting the liquidity on the Vouch token, doing buy and burns. So over the bear market, this thing will just keep sitting there churning away. So the more community validators we can get into the system, the sweeter that ride's going to be over the longer term. And the way I sort of position it is like that snowball effect, where at the moment we've just been packing the first inner core of that snowball with phase one, and now we're just putting another little layer on phase two, and then we're about to push it down the hill when we get phase two out the door and the Vouch tokens out there, and that snowball will just keep growing and growing because of the revenue token and because of the revenue generated from the validators.
Yeah, that sounds like a good sort of infinite money glitch that just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that we've seen with PTGC is how aggressive buy and burns can be for price. And I completely understand the original sort of what were called tax tokens were things like Safe Moon, that all of them failed. And they sort of did it in a Ponzi way where the people coming in at the end paid the people at the start.
Exactly.
This and sort of how PTGC are doing it, revenue token is actually a lot more applicable because it's generating revenue for a project. You look at Ethereum, and the Ethereum Foundation doesn't have ways of generating revenue. They've just got, all they can do is sell down their Ethereum tokens to fund the system. So if they need money for development or R&D or enhancing the system, they've got to sell their treasury down, which is getting smaller and smaller. Whereas tokens that have revenue, whether it's from validators or from taxes, you can then fund marketing, you can fund buy and burns, you can fund things that you want to do within the system without having to dump the team tokens or the treasury tokens to actually do these. So it's much better
Yeah.
for price. It's better for the token holders.
Mm.
And
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I've been very cognizant of that when I've been designing the Vouch token. Like, how can we remove sell pressure from it? How can we add buy pressure to it? Because they're obviously one of the core things that determine price over the longer term. So reduce sellers, increase buyers, thicken liquidity. How can we make that the best we possibly can? And we're pretty lucky that we can do some very interesting things with the revenue streams that are generated in the system, because we've got the ability to take Pulse and stake it to get the V Pulse. And when we do that, that Pulse stays in the ecosystem, so it can be used for creating more validators and the like. So with the revenue streams that come in, we can actually mint V Pulse to Vouch holders. So we take a revenue stream rather than just give them Pulse or Vouch for that matter. Which, if we keep giving people more Vouch, then they may be inclined to sell it. If we keep giving them more, okay, every time I get this, I'm just going to sell it. That's how I'm going to capture the yield. Okay, can we be smarter about that and maybe say, okay, rather than give you Vouch token, which I think you should be holding, or give you Pulse, which is fine, you can sell that and it's not going to impact the price of our token. How about we mint you V Pulse? So you're getting given the token that is going to appreciate in value against Pulse. You're bolstering the system with more potential for validators, and we're capturing that value to stay inside the ecosystem. And we can give you the V Pulse token. And if you ever do choose to sell that, you can go and actually hand that back into the staking protocol and get your Pulse back out. Now, it doesn't matter if you try and sell the V Pulse, that will all arb out anyway because it's redeemable for Pulse. But what I think is really great is if we can keep you holding. So if you want to stay in the ecosystem and we can keep you holding a yield-bearing V Pulse token and capture the value of the system in your Vouch token, to me that's a big win. Like if we can keep growing that ecosystem and keep it, it's a semi-closed loop, I guess, from that point of view, where we can keep feeding back in on the system. So that's been sort of the core essence in the way we've looked at how we design the Vouch token.
yeah, that's exciting from that point of view, and for the tokenomics in general. A lot of people don't understand the difference between liquidity and market cap, in that there's only a small amount of the tokens that are circulating available to buy. So that when you buy a token, the market cap, so Bitcoin has the highest liquidity. And I've seen a few stats that say if you put $1 into Bitcoin, the market cap increases by about $12.50.
Is that true?
Yeah. At the moment, the liquidity on Pulse Chain, if you put $1 in, you're getting the market cap growing by about $100 in value. And
Yep.
a lot of tokens, they have that sort of much more amplified effect. So people don't realize when you're actually taking revenue and buying the tokens out of the liquidity pool, it just pumps the price like crazy. And we all know that people FOMO after green candles, so they see the price pumping, they buy in, that causes it to go harder, more revenue generated, price pumps harder, more bought off the market. So that's been one of the big successes of PTGC, in that it just keeps growing and growing and growing because it has bonded liquidity with the core assets. When the core assets move up, it moves up, and then it's got the added that it's moving higher against those because of the buy and burn. So
Yeah, no, you're right. So that's the thing that I think is a little bit unique on Pulse Chain. And look, I'm happy to be proven wrong and see if this is happening on other chains. And I'll preface this by saying it's a double-edged sword as well. But what I've seen happen a lot on Pulse Chain is that building of liquidity webs. So we all understood the Hart's law, where when you start linking liquidity it's price positive if the asset you're linking it with goes up, then drags everything else up with it. And that's the way crypto markets work. That's why they're so reflexive in the way they perform, and why when Bitcoin goes up, ETH goes up. We all understand that. So I guess on Pulse Chain, we've tinkered with that a lot, and everyone's experimented with, okay, if I link it with this project over here, I can be the beneficiary of the outsized growth on that project. But we've got to be careful that if you do too much of that web activity and you link it with a token that goes pear-shaped, it has the opposite effect as well, where it can bring you down to the downside. So we've got to find that balance, and we had a bit of a chat about this off air as well, about burning liquidity and my thoughts on that. So I think locking liquidity is good. Burning liquidity, maybe not so good. If we ever need to migrate liquidity, it makes it very tricky to do that if you no longer have the tokens. So I think locking liquidity is really important, and growing liquidity is really important. But yeah, we've seen a lot of experiments played out on chain, and we've seen what works and what doesn't. So yeah, we can all take those learnings and build it into our future projects. And that when we see the core assets rocket up in price, the value that goes up on Pulse Chain is going to be eye-watering when it happens. And I just don't think people are ready for how that's going to look.
I look forward to that day.
Yeah, I think we all do, mate. It's been a long way.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty soon. I think the timing of your launch of the Vouch token, which will hopefully, be this month, will actually capture that very well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about liquidity pools. What are you using as the main pairs for Vouch? And are you bonding it to stables? Are you bonding it to core assets? Do you have is it mainly core assets and a few speculative things? How is it going to be bonded?
Yeah, good questions. So initially, like, we have a very tight bonding so I'll talk about two different tokens. We've got our VPulse token, and that one's obviously very tightly bonded with the Pulse token, Pulse coin. Like I said, they're pretty much 1-to-1. Well, what I should say is the ratios are heavily locked. So the way that works is that when we first launched the VPulse token, it started at 1-to-1 with Pulse. So that was the baseline where it started. And then as the validators are doing their work, the VPulse token is capturing the value of that extra pulse that's generated. So when you have a look on a chart, and you're charting VPulse to Pulse in the ratio between them, what you see is just a steady rise of VPulse going up in price against Pulse. So whilst it's going up in value, it's predictable. Like the ratios are predictable. We can say, okay, over time, this is going to go up maybe 12 or so percent at current rates against Pulse. So you can sort of map that out, and for that reason, we have our main liquidity pool with VPulse Pulse. From the Vouch token point of view, it makes sense to have a bit of liquidity with probably VPulse, to be honest. Like we'll do a lot with Pulse as well, but VPulse is a good one to have liquidity with because it acts the same as Pulse, but has that extra little kicker on it. So why not take advantage of the extra little kicker? So that's something we'll do. In terms of thickening liquidity, I think the main pool we inject liquidity into will probably be the Vouch Pulse pool, but that's just that's how our system allows us to do it, is we can easily inject into that pool, but we can also then add liquidity and shuffle liquidity around to different tokens that we think are worth aligning with. If we think Hex is going to blast off, it pays to have some liquidity against Hex. If PTGC is leverage on pulse or it's an index of the chain, then hey, it probably makes sense to have a bit of liquidity with those guys. And as we see other more speculative things arise where we think we can get that X factor, it pays to put a little bit of liquidity with them. Now, obviously, you've got to be measured in how you do that. I mentioned it's a double-edged sword, so we've just got to be measured in how we do that. But we'll be um, picking things, and the community can bring ideas of, okay, I think we should put a bit of liquidity with X token, and we can sort of run with that. But I think you won't go too far wrong linking with core coins as well.
Yeah, that's positive for the price of Vouch moving forward, because if it's essentially an index or a managed fund of the main tokens on Pulse Chain, and then you've got this added revenue coming through, then you can have a really positive price.
Yeah.
I just heard last week, if you track the value of PTGC versus Pulse Chain, it's actually done 1000x against Pulse Chain. So it's crazy
you
when
got to also understand that starts from a low base as well. So there's that big initial move. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Like after that initial move, what you should see is some sort of stabilization, and hopefully, if you're doing things right, it should go up in value against Pulse Chain. I think on the Vouch side of things, that's a bit of a no-brainer. We're earning Pulse and we're injecting that Pulse into buy and burns and things like that. So it should be natural that goes up. Now, if people are selling down the token, yeah, they're going to paint a bit of a chart, but overall, this thing should keep tracking up as a bare minimum, keep tracking up against Pulse. But we think with a few of the other cool things we've got in play with the buy and burns and things like that, that will add a little bit of an X factor where we can make that chart look pretty good.
Yeah. You basically, by holding Vouch, you're really earning more Pulse Chain, because if it's going up against the value of Pulse Chain, you can then swap back into Pulse Chain when you want and have a higher value than you did before, because of those buy and burn factors pushing the price against Pulse Chain. But then as Pulse Chain goes up, even if Vouch had none of that revenue, if Pulse Chain does a 10x, Vouch does a 10x. If you then add a multiplier with the revenue of 3 to 5 times, you then got 20x, 40x, 50x that you're getting against that. So yeah, those
I won't comment on what it will do or what it could do. That's probably getting into dangerous territory. But it's like we always say, we design these things to do the best we can. So the goals that I had for Vouch, the token, were getting it in a wide distribution of hands. So from a phase 3 point of view, we've got some good governance. That was probably one of the bigger things, is how do we get this in the right people's hands so that moving forward, we've got a good community there. How do we capture the value in the system? And how can we more align everyone? So how can we align the Vouch holders that are going to be the governance side with the people that are coming and staking their Pulse, and also the validators? Like, how do we bring all that into alignment? And that's where secondary tokens in these sorts of systems really help. Is you can take your core protocol and then you can start to weave all this together so that the whole and so we've moved from a protocol now to an ecosystem. That's what it's effectively becoming now, is an ecosystem. So I guess that's the big step change from phase 1 to phase 2, is we've gone from a protocol now to an ecosystem.
And how will the token work versus, you said these things can be changed and modified, and the DAO will get to decide how they're modified? Does that mean the code is locked and immutable? How does it work from that point of view, that you can't change it, that the people in the community have reassurances, but how does it work that with the code versus these things are still modifiable as it's advantageous to the system?
Yeah. So we've got a range of smart contracts, and they all vary in the immutability of them and what can and can't be done. So let's have a look at the Vouch side. Vouch token is immutable once it's launched. That's it. It's done. There's three. Don't quote me on this, but let's just say in general, there's three settings that will be configurable, and that's your revenue settings. So your buy tax, sell tax, transfer tax. So that can be changeable, and I'll talk how the community can do that later on. And I think that's pretty much the only settings that can be changed on that token. I could be a little bit wrong on that. Then, and we've got distribution contracts that just handle the revenue flows between the system. They're pretty static contracts. There's a number of settings we can change about where those revenue flows are going. So these are configurable settings. So the contracts themselves can't be changed, but these settings can be changed. And that's eventually what the community will vote on. On the liquid staking protocol side of things, that's a little bit different. We're playing with a moving target, which is the underlying network, so Pulse chain. So when you look across at Ethereum, you see Ethereum get upgraded regularly. We've just gone through the Pectra upgrade, and that was quite a substantial upgrade, especially for validators. So we need to have flexibility on the liquid staking protocol side of things, where when the underlying network changes beneath us, we've got to be able to change contracts to go along with those changes. One of the big changes recently on ETH was currently you need 32 million 32 million Pulse to stake a validator. It was 32 ETH on the Ethereum network. And they've just ramped that up to where I think you can go up to something like 2,000 ETH per validator. And that's to facilitate more institutional type staking situations where people are running thousands of validators. That doesn't make sense when you can sort of dwindle that back and manage it a lot easier with one or two validators. So that was one of the big changes on the Ethereum side, and that eventually will probably come to Pulse chain. So we need a bit of flexibility to deal with things like that. So all that being said, the phase 3 will be implementing what is called a governor contract. So this is a standard contract that is used on a lot of big protocols on Ethereum. And the governor contract basically decentralizes the settings that can be changed. So we say only the governor contract can change these settings. And how do you handle that within the governor contract? Well, people can make proposals. They can submit the changes. So we want to change this setting, this setting, and this setting, and they'll literally code the change. So it's a true DAO. So they code the change, and then everyone votes on it. And as soon as everyone approves that, the code gets pushed, the changes get made in the contract, and that's the state of the network. So we're a little way from being there, but that's the vision, is if we can get to a proper DAO that's using governor contracts to manage all those protocol settings, that's where we want to be.
So yeah, that's really interesting that you've got multiple contracts. It sounds like designing this thing was a huge headache and a nightmare for the software developers, but it makes a lot of sense that rather than, I know PTGC runs on one contract and it has 1% to buy and burn, 2% to reflections, and then 2% to the DAO. And then people can vote on how that 2% gets distributed, whether it's liquidity pools, buy and burn, et cetera, et cetera. So from this, it sounds like the code is immutable, but then the settings that you need to change or modify can be changed as required. And when the DAO takes over, it will then be able to run the system, or essentially the holders will be the owners of the system, and they'll be able to run the system. So it's, I guess you always have that balance between function and immutability. You can't have an L1 that's immutable because you always have to update it. But
so I think of it like, I think a good example is, and we've all seen this play out on Pulse chain, is like the MakerDAO contracts. So they're configurable in such a way, but you need particular voting power in the form of whether it was the maker tokens or whatever it was. So you had to, or I can't remember what the main voting token was on MakerDAO, but you you needed to hold a certain amount of those tokens so you could participate in the governance side of things. So that's pretty common when you move from a simple token, and that's why I mentioned how we're going from a protocol to an ecosystem. So if you launch a simple token, you've usually got one smart contract, and that's your token contract. Then you become a protocol. Okay, well, a protocol by its very nature does a little bit more than a single token. So you have multiple contracts that need to interact. And then the next evolution on is, okay, you're going then to an ecosystem, and that's expanding it out and adding more features and more value. You end up with more smart contracts. So just referring back to PTGC, they probably started with one contract. Then I know they've added other tokens. So they've got tokens, they've got contracts for that. They've probably got other tokens that other contracts that manage liquidity. So they've become more of like a protocol or an ecosystem in their own right. But that's what you want. Like as things evolve, you start adding on all these features, and as long as you're doing it in a careful way, and you're trying to do it in as decentralized way as you can, and keep the voting and things like that decentralized, I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, that sounds good. So on to it. We've talked sort of off air about the crazy nightmare of actually building a token. If you sort of look at if crypto was reading the time on a clock, doing the background of this is like building all the parts to the clock. And yeah, I haven't envied you, because it seems like it's been a nightmare of a process. You know, the level of detail and the level of testing you've gone through.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you said you're up to 13 test tokens. You're currently on the second audit. Yeah, I've been really impressed that you've gone to the nth degree to get everything as perfect as it can be to make a smooth launch. So with the launch, talk us through what will roughly be the format for the launch. You know, when it launches, are there going to be tokens held back for different people? Is it going to be a fair launch? Where can we buy it, and how will it work?
Yeah. Yep. Once again, protocol-based tokens or an ecosystem-based token, so treated very differently to like a meme coin sort of launch. Being a governance token, you've got to be very particular about how you launch, because you don't want to lose control of a protocol too early in its involvement. So we've got to stage that in the right way, making sure we get good wide distribution and active participants in the system. So the launch will be based around, okay, how can we best meet that design criteria or that requirement? In terms of the actual go live on the token, we all hate sniper bots, so we'll put in a little bit of sniper protection that's built into the protocol. So that will run for a short period of time on token launch, and we're actually pretty lucky. We can pre-configure all the liquidity pools and everything, so get all the starting liquidity set without the token actually being tradable. So we can configure all that, get all that in place, so people can't sort of jump the gun and go set up liquidity pools prior and mess with the ratios and things like that. So we can be very particular in the way we set up the liquidity pools to begin with. We press the go button, and yeah, we have the sniper protection in place for X number of time. I'm not going to divulge that because that defeats the purpose of having it. And then over time, we want to try and make the launch as fair as we can, so you don't see either a sniper bot come in and grab a whole heap of the supply just to later dump, or we don't see an over-representation by one or two wallets. So we're trying to do it in such a way where everyone gets a fair shake at getting into the project. Our aim is not to produce a big, like the big green wick and then you get the price. I'd rather see it stabilize early and then everyone goes up together. I don't want to see a big wick on the chart if we can help that. It's a good talking point. We went up 1,000x in 2 days, but the reality of the people that benefited from that are slim, and I think for the health moving forward of the token, I'm happy if that doesn't happen on our chart. I'd much prefer it didn't, and we can go forward as a united group and build the value that way. And hopefully we get all the X's that everyone deserves, but it's in a more of a sustainable way, I guess.
Well, it sounds like the launch, like everything else, you've put a huge amount of thought into to make it as fair and workable as possible. So where do you recommend to buy the token at launch or after launch? Where do people look for it? It being that a revenue token, how do we buy it? How do we set up our slippage? If you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah. So with revenue tokens, when you are buying them, and if you go to, obviously it'll be available on PulseX V2, that will be the primary pool, and we'll set up a couple of other pools on 9mm and where else? Sorry, on 9-inch, and there's one other pool. I will probably do a bit of a V1 pool as well, I think. So that will be the initial pools that are set up. Now, when you want to trade into those pools using, say, the PulseX interface, obviously you've got to adjust your slippages for the percentages for the fees on buys and sells. So if you don't know what you're doing, that can be a little bit tricky. Or if you're trying to route through a pool that has lower liquidity, that can be a little bit tricky. So you can go direct to V2 on the PulseX UI, the PulseX homepage, but you've probably got to understand what you're doing a little bit more. What I'll probably be encouraging everyone to do is if they don't want to mess around with those settings and they're a bit unsure how you should set those settings, we'll work with the guys at pulseswap.io and get that set up so that you don't have to worry about that. It will auto calculate those settings for you. That'll make it a lot easier, and it will still stream through the V2 pool anyway. So effectively, you're buying it from the exact same pool. You're just using a different user interface, which I think is probably a little bit more user friendly for these sorts of things.
So what you're saying is the pulseswap.io will include the taxes. So you set your slippage to what you would normally, and then the tax just comes off automatically for the tokens that you get.
Yeah, that's right. So normally when you might set your slippage to 0.05% or something like that, just for a normal trade with a token that's got a decent amount of liquidity, and that would go through. Obviously, with a revenue token, that changes that dynamic because you've got to allow for the fee. But yeah, you're right. PulseSwap.io you will see it as, okay, just 0.5, which is your normal slippage, and they will have a little banner there that says, okay, we've accounted for this fee in your trade, so you'll know that it's doing it, and that just makes life a lot easier for people. On that note, the liquidity when this is launched, I think people will be happy with the liquidity that goes into the token. So
you're putting a good chunk of liquidity in from the Pulse that you have, rather than some tokens on Pulse chain that have unfortunately wanted to have community put in liquidity, and you get wild price movements as a result.
Yeah, we want people to be able to, and that's so. When you're structuring liquidity, you can structure it in such a way so that you get these massive X's when it first launches, because you're putting in $1 worth of liquidity. So every dollar buy into that will just rocket the chart up, because you're buying into very low liquidity, which awesome looking chart for initially, but over the longer term, that's not great from a liquidity ratio point of view. So we want to try and we've worked a lot to try and get that right. We're planning the best we can. See what happens when it goes live, but we're trying to structure things in such a way so that everyone gets a fair shake at it.
Yeah, that's the typical launch of a chart, where the first few days it's done insane X's, and then all those early holders dump on everyone else that's come in because they've got it for a song. So it
That's right.
it doesn't grab the eye as much, but it's actually much better for the community in the long term. And you're not getting those people who heard about a launch or a cabal sort of just dumping on you and constantly extracting liquidity. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's right.
a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good way to launch.
Yeah, so we'll try and get that the best we can. Look, as like it's going on a deck, so the best buys are going to be the early buys. Still, like it's like buying anything when it's low value to start off with. If you get in early, then yeah, you're going to be in a better position. But that's no different to anything else in life, whether it's a stock or whatever. If you're in early, you generally reap the rewards of that.
And where can we find more ongoing information? You do you do Telegram? Do you do Twitter?
Yeah, there's so a few places, and rather than sort of give you a deluge of all the different handles, I think the best place to go is to, like you can see up in my name there, vouch.run. That's the landing page for the ecosystem, and from there you can bounce out to the Telegram, to X. So you'll be able to tap into all the various places there, all the system documentations there, and that talks about the liquid staking protocol, but also the Vouch token and how some of the mechanics work in that. So yeah, a whole bunch of useful information there. But if you give us a follow on X would be nice. It's always good to get a bit more traction on that platform and get a bit more visibility for Vouch the project, but also for Pulse Chain out there. So the more presence we have as a community on X, the better for the whole chain. So yeah, that would a follow on there would be much appreciated.
Nice. So basically get the safe links off the vouch.run website so that you know you're on the right channel.
Yep.
Yeah. If you see things in the Telegram, verify them in the X. There are constantly scammers coming through different parts saying we need to relaunch the token. We've cancelled this. I've had some
Those fun
experiences
and games.
with that in the past. So
Mm.
just verify things in numerous locations. It's always a safe way to do it. Yeah.
Yep, totally agreed. Yeah, be on your wares when you're, especially Telegram. It's very easy for someone to pretend to be someone they're not. So I've seen a few Jexxas floating around from time to time. So yeah, be mindful.
Would you like to run through? You've shown me the dashboard before. Would you
Mm.
like to run through some of the information on that, or is that still in the development stage?
Well, it's a little bit under wraps. Do we want to do that? Let's have a go. We'll see if we can. You've caught me on the hop, but
Totally up to you.
we'll
If you want to show it, you can show it. If you
yeah,
want to wait until
I'll
after
have a
launch, you can.
look. We'll have a quick run through it, and I don't want to overwhelm people with too much information. It is a bit of a busy site, but let's have a crack and we'll see how it goes for everyone. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'll just have to set up a bit of a screen share. So hold on for one moment.
Yeah. And obviously, tokenomics, you can have the best tokenomics in the world. That doesn't guarantee the success of a project. But when you have a sort of tried and tested dev, when they've gone through lots of the Jexxa has been in the ecosystem for a long time. He was an early Hexican. He's built this to support the protocol. He's been in crypto a lot longer than Hex has been around. When you have a dev that has good intentions, when you set up a system with incredible tokenomics, only time will tell what happens, but you're setting everything up for success. And I think most people, if they could get into something like PTGC in the early days, they would be stoked. So yeah, it's again not financial advice, no guarantees of returns, but you've got a bonded liquidity with Pulse Chain. You've got buy and burns on top of that. I find it hard to see how it won't be a success.
Okay, just bear with me a moment, mate. I've just got to see if I can get this right. Oh, hang on. I've gone Gone rogue over here. Give me one moment. Actually, let's do it over this way. This will make it a bit easier. Okay, that's better. That's what I want. Okay. There we go. All right, I think we've got there in the long run. Okay, you can see that, can you, mate? You're able to see that screen share?
Yes, I can see the screen share.
Cool. All
With
right, a
all
little
the
bit going on.
information on it.
Yeah, it's a little bit going on. We're just downloading some initial sync data here, so that will just continue in the background while we're going. But we talked about having two revenue streams in the ecosystem. So once this dashboard's live, this is where you can sort of come to check on how that's working. So we'll divide it up into two sections in this top section here. We've got the Vouch side, so the Vouch token, and then on this side we've got the liquid staking protocol settings and metrics of how it's currently running at the moment. So on the Vouch token side, you can see we've got the buy and sell fees and the transfer fees. So that's how we're collecting the revenue on that side. And in our test example here, this has generated a bit of revenue already. So only 6,000 pulse just on this test platform. But we'll see that grow over time. So as there's activity on the Vouch token, this revenue generated by the actual Vouch token will grow. Likewise, on the liquid staking protocol side, you can see the revenue generated here is once again test mode. So we're up to about 2.3 million pulse that's been generated as part of this testing. So it's that's our two revenue streams. They're the important things that we see flowing into the ecosystem. And then we get to choose what we want to do with those revenue streams. So that's sort of where we drop down below here. And those two revenue streams fall into, let's call it a bucket, falls into this big distribution bucket. And we can tweak where we want to send those revenue streams. So we can add more to liquidity pools. We can add more to what we call the master validator, and that goes to build up all the community validators. So the more of these we add, the more revenue we bring in up here. So that's one of those feedback loops. Fee pool, that's just a way to reward people that are in this liquid staking protocol. So currently that's where all the fees go, is to the liquid staking protocol. So we're going to redirect that a little bit. The SAFU, so that's just a safety account that will sit there, and if anything untoward happens, hopefully we've got a little bit of a buffer there we can help people out. Treasury, this is fees earned by the ecosystem that will go to fund various things, marketing, so forth, the deal with most treasuries, sorry. Voters, these are not voters in the typical sense of users that are voters. These are voters that vote on actions that are happening in the liquid staking protocol. So it's a very unique task that is done by community members there. But that's a very limited set. And then the most important thing, I guess, from the vouch holder point of view is these rewards pools. And this is where it starts to get a little bit exciting. So this is just divvying up the major portions of where the revenue will go that are just sort of supporting the ecosystem as a whole. This is where we start to get into this is probably what Vouch token holders are more interested in. What rewards am I going to get? So each one of these rewards pools is funded with a certain amount, and that is depicted here. So Vouch reward pool, VPLS rewards pool, and the Pulse rewards pool. Now, what we're referring to here with these names is not if you're holding Vouch and if you're holding VPulse and if you're holding Pulse. It's if you're holding Vouch, these are the tokens that we can send out to you or do something with. These are the main tokens of the system. So we've got Vouch that we can do something with, VPulse we can do something with, or Pulse. Now, I think this pool will probably not get used a great deal, because why give people Pulse as rewards when we can give people VPulse? Like, I think that's a better way to reward people. They get a yield bearing token and it supports the ecosystem. So this will probably be limited in its use, I think, unless there's a particular use case. So let's drop down into these two reward pools and see what can happen. So we'll have a look at the Vouch reward pool. So if we wanted to send out Vouch tokens, or let's see what happens with the Vouch tokens that hit this reward pool. We can send out holder dividends. And in this particular instance, we've got the Vouch holders set to 20% of this rewards pool, which is 2% of this overall distribution. I hope that makes sense. So you can see all the various settings here, and the pie chart depicts it all. So let's have a look what we can do. We can send it out to Vouch holders. We can do buy and burn. So at the moment, this is a pretty aggressive buy and burn. We're doing a buy and burn of 50% on the Vouch token. We can do the same one. Yeah, that's a pretty aggressive one. And obviously we can ramp that up if we wanted to send more to this. So rather than send some to this Pulse pool, which I said is less likely to get used, why don't we get that 10% and send that into here? And that will create a larger portion of buy and burn. So yeah, we can burn it. We can send it to stakers. Now this is really preparing for phase 3. So once we move into phase 3, where people are staking and voting on proposals and things like that, that's where that will come into play. So this, once again, probably won't even be used in phase 2. Voters, that's the same role as up here. Very limited set of people that would be getting the benefit of that. And validators, obviously, they do a lot in the ecosystem. So hey, let's look after those guys as well, and that brings us all into alignment with the Vouch holders, the validators, and the Pulse stakers. So that's what this is all about, is aligning everyone. So that's pretty much the way in which we can carve up all the rewards that are coming through the pool, or how we choose to treat the Vouch token. And down here, you're just seeing those metrics of what's been sent out. So I won't sort of delve into each one of those. Same thing on the VPulse. We've got the same settings we can apply to VPulse. If we burn VPulse, what that effectively does is it changes the ratio of VPulse versus Pulse. So that's how the ratio is calculated. How much total circulating supply of VPulse is there relative to Pulse in the system, and that gives you a ratio. If we start burning that down, then that ratio goes up. So effectively, you're capturing more yield from the system. Once again, we can shell that out to the various players and Vouch holders. So if we wanted to give people a token that meant if they wanted to claim some of the yield, but not sell down the Vouch token, if we wanted to support the price of Vouch, then we could issue VPulse as rewards to Vouch holders. So that's a token that is not going to harm the price of Vouch, and allows them to capture the yield from the VPulse because it's already staked, or go and cash it in and get the pulse for it. They can do what they like. So yeah, so I think we've got the mix right in terms of the dials that can be tweaked there, and where we can send things. Won't go into this one. It's pretty much most of the same. Like I said, it's probably less likely to get used unless there's a particular use case for it. But hey, let's build it in there so that if we want to, we can. So that's pretty much all the reward side. And like I said, that's probably the exciting thing for Vouch token holders and for the protocol users. This last remaining bit, we're just showing metrics of what's going on the validator side of things. So how many validators, how much yield over time, those sorts of metrics. What's more important from the protocol health point of view is, okay, well, what do our liquidity pools look like, and where are we able to add more liquidity? So as we inject Pulse revenue into the liquidity pools, it drops down into our liquidity manager, and it automatically gets that Pulse and swaps it and adds it into the various, so into these two main pools here. So it'll support the price of the tokens with thicker liquidity. And you can always see where our thickest pools are here. We'll be keeping tabs on that over time. So yeah, that's the dashboard in a nutshell. So you dragged that one out of me, mate. I wasn't planning on showing anyone that, but well
There
done.
you go, viewers. You got to look behind the dev curtain, the secret sauce.
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, there's
This
been
looks complicated to look at. I can't imagine what that was like to build. That would have given most people a few migraines trying to conceptualize that.
yeah, and I just let me clarify something you said as well. I'll just stop this share for now. Uh, I'll just clarify something you said as well. I'm not the developer of the smart contract sitting behind this. My knowledge only goes so far, but we've got a really great team that you probably all know that have built the contracts. They've been awesome in terms of supporting Vouch and the amount of testing we've had to do. I think we've all had to be patient on both sides of that equation. It took a lot longer than we all anticipated, but it has been rigorously tested. So that's the best you can hope for. Is we've between myself and the testing I've done and the dev team's testing, we've been at it for way longer than we all anticipated. And now, like I said, we've got the third set of eyes running over the code. We had the initial audit, modified a few things and done some more tests and going out for this, what is hopefully the final audit. But yeah, we're pretty happy with how that's tracking.
Yeah, that's exciting. You must be very keen for it to come out with all the work that you've put in, all the time, and all of the. And will that dashboard eventually be available to the public for people to view so that they can look at all of that, or is that just a dev sort of team dashboard?
Yeah, no, on go live for the Vouch token, this will be available. We want to keep people in the loop and so they understand what's going on. This is a really nice way to see everything at a glance. And look, we'll tweak it over time as people give us feedback and say, yeah, we could do this or we need this. We'll tweak it, but I think it's nice to have at least a good starting dashboard for people when they're understanding what's going on.
Yeah, it's great to be able to see all that information, have it all in the one place, make it all simplified. You can see where things are going. You can see what's being added to liquidity pools so people can cash out, and what's happening with buy and burns and revenue. So yeah,
people aren't going to cash out of this one, mate.
They get too much benefit.
Well, that's the hope. Well, I mean, we hope we've got it right. Look, there's always going to be. I've done a bit of a talk on value and price, and you have value, and then price oscillates around what value is. So yeah, we're hoping we're locking in lots of value, but price will always oscillate around where that sits.
Yeah, and one other thing that I recently learned with revenue tokens is that when you're distributing, say you distribute Vouch to holders as reflections or as yield or interest, that actually creates buy pressure on the token, because all of the revenue comes in the native token, and then you have to buy back the Vouch to actually distribute it. So even if 100% of the reflections get sold, you're still 5% up on the price because you're getting that 5% tax back.
Not sure that's technically accurate,
because you have to, like, all of the revenue comes back as pulse. So then to get Vouch to distribute, you have to buy it back off the market.
Yeah, correct.
So even if 100% of that got sold, you'd still be 5% up because of the tax that comes in.
Yeah, and I guess the big difference in the Vouch ecosystem is the pulse is coming from the validators as well. So it's not from the revenue simply generated by the token. We're grabbing the pulse from the validators, and that's going in. So if we do a buy and burn, it's literally it's buying up the Vouch off the market and then sending it to the dustbin. So it's price positive. Like you get the boost in the price, then you get the addition of the value by the burning of the token, much like PulseX sort of arrangement where the value is getting captured then in that token.
And I knew that buy and burns were always really positive for price, but I thought reflections previously were negative for price because you're giving someone a token that they can sell down. But
Mm,
yeah, what I learned recently was that all of the, you've got the pulse coming in as pulse, but even the revenue coming in as tax comes in as PLS. And then to
mm.
get the vouch to distribute, you've got to buy it off market to then distribute it as reflections.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
most
think there's a
people
bit of
won't sell
yeah,
100% of the reflections, but yeah, even
yeah.
if they
There
did
is a little
for
bit of nuance in what you've just said, but yeah, and it depends whether it's coming from the buy and sell side and all sorts of things. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, there is some nuance to that.
yeah,
Um,
reflections are still price positive for the token as
yeah,
well as the buy and burn.
yeah. And I guess the other thing that, and I've mentioned this, but I'll just to clarify it. So I've said that we can do the buy and the burn on Vouch, or we could choose to do that on the Pulse, the V Pulse side as well. So since you're sort of talking about, okay, well, what happens when you buy things with V Pulse, we don't actually buy that off market. I mean, there's no point. We've got the ability to mint it. So we've got the pulse sitting there rather than go buy it off the DEX, which will just get arbitraged anyway, and we just take slippage for no good reason. We can mint it directly. So I think that's a good way of getting funds out to people. As we, like I said, we mint it, keeps the pulse in the ecosystem, gives you the liquid staking token, doesn't harm the price. So yeah, I think it's a win-win from that sort of aspect.
Nice. Well, yeah, that all looks great. Thank you for sharing all the information. Thanks for showing everyone the dashboard and all the wonderful metrics that are involved. And yeah, I appreciate your time, Jexxa.
No, I
We're looking.
sorry, mate. Thanks for having us on, and thanks for intriguing questions as well. It made it very easy to go through.
That's good. I know I'll be sitting there at launch waiting for it to go.
Yeah, I think I'll be there too.
Great.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it, mate. It's been a bit of a monumental effort, but it's been very rewarding at the same aspect as well. Learn a lot along the way. So yeah, I'm very excited to get out the door.
Great. Well, thank you for your time today, and we look forward to seeing more of you.
Perfect. Thanks, mate.